Alex Del Sordo, and I have been doing Coaches Yelling with Eric Murray. He won the first one, but now I get him alone to myself, and I'm up late last night thinking, what am I going to say to this guy? What am I going to talk about? Because he's done hundreds of these, and this guy, and if you don't know him, you're not a real rower. I mean, for God's sakes, like the guy has won so many Olympics medals. He's won world championships, one of the most popular rowers in our sport. But Eric, thank you for doing this morning with us on the podcast.
No sweat, buddy.
Good.
Anytime. Always here to help. Share the love.
So listen, man, I do this with everybody, and unfortunately, they're not as popular as you in rowing. So we all know what you did at the Olympic level, but walk me through, how old were you, where were you when you took your first stroke, how did you get involved with rowing, and what led you to work with Bond?
I tell people all the time, man, it's great when you go to kids and stuff and you go, look, get into rowing because you're going to get time off school. And I'm like, yeah. And that's basically why I signed up for rowing, was to get time off school, because you get Fridays off if you're going to regattas, or there's a week here and there for different big events. And at the same time, like, I was a bit of a chubby kid. I sort of grew up and out a little bit. So I was trying to find a sport that would sort of complement rugby, because in New Zealand, rugby is number one. That's what we play. And so I was playing rugby in the winter, which is sort of the end of April months, right through until sort of August, September. And I just really wanted to find something in the summer to play and enjoy, keep fit, and sort of slipped upon rowing, basically because you get mustered at the school saying, look, anyone want to try this sport, come on down. And that's how it happened.
Wow. So how old were you when you took your first stroke? You said you were a chubby kid, right? Like, how old were you when you took it?
14, nearly 15 was the first year. And like, to be fair, the first couple of years were just shocking, like terrible. We pretty much wasted our novice year because we were just like larrikins having a bit of a laugh. And that's sort of what happened. And then slowly you start to figure out, and rowing's a great sport, and I tell it to people all the time, even to business people at the same time, that rowing's a sport where, like, work in equals results. Put the work in, the time, the effort, the intensity, that sort of stuff. You get really good results out of it. You don't find there's too many people that train hard and they're doing a lot of miles and that sort of thing, and they don't actually produce like reasonable results. And that's what I started figuring out over that time, that was what was happening. And then all of a sudden you start getting some medals or making some finals. And then all of a sudden you want to actually push on and see where you can take it.
So when did you start actually winning medals? Like, when did you start getting good at rowing? Was it early on? I mean, you said there was a couple of years it was terrible. Like,
yeah, it took a couple of years. Like, our final year at high school, so sort of 17, 18-year-old, was when I finally won a championship event. And that was like the Māori Cup. We were in like the quad. And that was basically the first sort of big event that we'd won. We'd won a couple of little regattas and bits and pieces before that, or we were generally in the finals in that year. But like the previous year and stuff like that, like, our goals were just to make finals, and that was what we were doing. And so it wasn't until that really my end year in high school that we actually won something. And so it's one thing I try and explain to people at the moment, because they want to see results really quickly, and they see their mates or the people before them winning, and you're like, look, it can take a bit of time, give it the patience and get going. And that's really what I found, was that one reason we were just half-assing it, and then the other reason is just took us that long to get good at what we were doing.
And in that, so at what point did you start to get a growth spurt? Like, at what point did you start to grow into your body and become the size you are?
Yeah, don't mind, my boy's just hanging around here, so he can join in on the interview. I guess it was probably around the sort of age of 18, 19, like even in my junior year when I made the junior team, and we went to Croatia in 2000. That year I sort of found that I went from this sort of chubby, undeveloped kid to probably, maybe I was a bit of a late bloomer, and you start to get the hormones and you start to go through, and then all of a sudden you get a bit of muscle growth, and then you start to slim down a little bit. So you don't necessarily change any weight, but the look view just changes. And that's really what I found was it was sort of around that sort of 19, 20-year-old was really when I started to mature into the body like of more of an athlete rather than like of a chubby kid.
And when you graduate high school, where did you go to university? What happens in that period of your time?
Yeah, so we don't really have a great university program in New Zealand, and like a lot of our athletes now are shipping up heading to the States, which is fantastic. I sort of I did actually have the opportunity. Is it Bob Ernest, the guy, University of Washington? I was emailing
you got recruited by Washington.
I was in contacts with a few guys after my junior year when we were in Croatia. We met up with a couple of people, and the offers were on the table. But the problem was back then was that the scholarships for guys were like, "Come over, you got to pay for everything," and we just couldn't do it. Wow. So basically, from that point, I was like, "Look, I'm going to go to university," and I went down to Christchurch University down there. But then, sort of rowing took over a little bit more. With squad and development, and then I was asked to come to Karapiro to be in like in an academy, and so that was really when I said, well, this a nudge. You can study at the same time, just do it online, extramural type of work. So I sort of decided that path was the way that I wanted to go, and that's really where I took it.
And okay, so you're like 2021. When do you get connected with Bond, and when do you guys start rowing together as a team?
So Hamish came into the program. He was a junior in the years of 2004. 2003. So he was a junior 2003. So we were sort of like a 3-year. There's a 3-year difference between Hamish and I. Oh. And I look at that and think, maybe if we were in the program round at the same time, maybe we would have rowed together for longer, if that makes sense. And so he was in that year that did all the testing for Athens that went, man, this is going to suck. It's going to be so windy. They were the 1,000-meter races where everybody was sinking and that type of thing. And so, of course, then I was going to the Olympics as a 22-year-old in Athens. And so, therefore, what happened was that he sort of made the under-23s a year after, and then he made it into the elite team quite young, but he was actually just showed like his work ethic and not so much talent, but the idea that he could just work, and he just had this underdog mentality, like, because he was a smaller guy, even back then he was sort of pushing mid-80s, and he's just trying to keep up with all of us that are sitting around that high 90s, 100 gigs. And that was sort of his philosophy, was just to push hard, just knock all these big guys off. And so it was really 2006 he came into the 4 that we were in, and then basically we spent 3 years in the 4 together, just in teaming up. And then on the side of that we were doing pairs together. When you break up the 4, you jump in pairs. So we actually knew quite early on that we were good in a pair, and it really just wasn't until after our disappointment where we screwed it up in Beijing that we got together and actually decided to have a nudge at the pair.
So 2008 that you guys started to find that path together? Like, that's when that happened?
Yeah, so 2008, for most people, if they want to go back and have a look at the history, was, we were world champions 2007. I love that race. Honestly, you guys got to watch that race. Put it up on YouTube. It's on there at the moment. We were last through the K. There was only a second in creating everybody. And of course, we went into Beijing year as world champions, and we just couldn't find what was making us go well that year in 2007 to transfer that into 2008. We were always searching for technique and speed. We were just off all the time, and we were just making finals of World Cups that year. And then we went to the Olympics, 4th in the semi, watch 1, 2, and 3 go on to get gold, silver, and bronze. Rest history. So it was really at that point where I was sort of ready to take a bit of a break, because I was like, man, trajectories like this, 5th in Athens, Beijing 7th, and I'm like, man, I'm not going that way. But of course, I had a bit of unfinished business, and he spoke to me about doing the pair, and I said, look, mate, I'm just gonna give it a month or 2 to digest and see where we go. And then it was really the fact that he came to me and said, look, Dick wants to coach us. and he thinks we'll actually go quite well in the pair. And when you've got one of the best rowing coaches in the world that says, "Hey, look, come and train under me, I think we can do some good stuff," you go, well, shit, it's an opportunity that you can't really turn down. And that's really when I came back into the program.
So he encouraged you to do this pair with you. Like, he was the one that was really pushing it. I have a million questions here, Eric, and one comes to mind is, you guys were pair partners for what? 8 years, 9 years? Like, you guys did it over 2 cycles, right?
Yeah.
Did you guys ever argue or yell or fight or piss and moan with one another? Like, what was it like inside that boat quietly, you guys?
Right. Okay. Here's the exclusive. To be fair, no. There was. I don't, and it's really hard to understand why, because you see it all the time in different crews and stuff like that, and they just implode. People hate each other, and they're like, "F you this," and that guy's a sea hunt, and all this sort of stuff. And you're just like, man, okay. And we really never had that. I think probably because the reason was that Hamish truly believed that he was the #1 rower, and he was like, "I'm going to be the best, and I'm going to get Eric to come along with me, and we're going to be like world champions." And on the other flip side of it, I was like, "Okay, mate, I'm not stronger than you," and all this sort of stuff. But yes, if we work together, it's going to go really well. And so what really happened quite quickly was that we had 100% trust in one another, that we were going to train to the death. We were going to put our bodies on the line, our minds on the line, where we weren't going to back down. No matter what was put in front of us, we would do it. And I think that showed a little bit because, see, on the water, Hamish was an absolute demon. When he was on the bike, an absolute demon. And I'd keep up with him for, if we went for a 100K bike ride, I'd be there for 95K, and then he'd drop me at the finish. But he'd know that I'd stay there the whole time. And so on the flip side, when I'm on the rowing machine and I'm doing these like incredible tests and pieces, he knew, he's just going, "Man, I can't keep up with that, but I'm going to try." So ultimately, you've got 2 people together that want to be the best, that are going to break themselves to do it. You don't have to ask those questions, and I think that's the thing, is that the moment that you've got a bit of a doubt from somebody, that's when trust issues and stuff seep in. So I guess on the other side of things as well, is we had a dictator and a coach, like Dick, the dictator, literally. So neither of us really could go up to him and say, "Dick, can we try this? Can we try that?" We just kept our mouths shut, and we were told what to do. Like, we basically got through to the Olympic Games without even sort of giving too much feedback. We just got told what to do every single day. We did it, and we went really well with it. But ultimately, while we were in the boat together, if I said something to Hamish like, "Mate, I think the catch is a bit hard," or, "Our finish is a bit rough," or, "We need to like maybe just try and free things up a bit, do this, feel the feet a bit more," whatever it was, he'd go, "Okay, we'll do that." And then on the flip side, if Hamish said that to me, because ultimately we knew that whatever either of us was asking the boat to do together was going to make us go better. So we both entertained the idea. So there wasn't one leader or whatever. I did all the calling just because I'm facing this way and I can't hear Hamish if he's saying anything. But apart from that, it was a really like 50-50 partnership. And that's really, I think, what made it work. And I think the other side of it as well, truly believe, and I know it's really hard, is, rowing's really social, and we love, going, yeah, and it is, it's great. And Hamish and I are really good friends. Would I say we're like best mates? No. Like, we're mates, but we're not best mates. And I think that's what kept it separate at the same time, because of the fact that I was in a different stage of life when Hamish was, when we came in the pair. So, of course, it wasn't like, "Mate, let's go to the cafe, let's have a coffee," or "Let's go to the pub, have a beer." We'll come down to rowing, we'll do our stuff, and then you go back to your place, I'll go back to mine, and then we'll come back to the centre and we'll do our job. And that's probably really what made it work quite well. Because if you're living in each other's pockets and things aren't going great, that's when you find that tensions and stuff start to build.
You said something interesting. You said it was a job. Like, it was your job. That was your profession, right? And I think that a lot of people don't treat rowing like a profession. And maybe that was that difference, right? You guys kept it at the water at the boathouse, and you would walk away and you'd have your separation. In that time, like, you're rowing together, like, how much time was committed to rowing together and training together? And how much were you doing outside of each other's presence?
In training terms,
terms.
yeah, in training terms, especially while we were with Dick, pretty much zero. So it was always we'd come and the one. So this is Dick Tonks. Like he's got a bit of a, I guess. I'm trying to use the best words to describe Dick. The fact is that it is a really dictatorship, and you probably hear people, especially over in North America, like probably in terms of Mike Spracklin, just real hard-nosed, just do whatever I bloody tell you to do and don't ask any questions. So what the thing with Dick is, his philosophy was just row, 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 row your boat. Very, very, very hard, very, very hardly down the stream. And that was basically what we did, is that up until 2010, and like we sort of alluded to it in the book, but probably hearing it from horse's mouth, we finished the world champs of Carapero. We just won, and we had like 3 weeks off, came back training, and Dick just said, right, we're not going to do any more weights. We're wasting our time. We're not going to get any stronger. We're going to get faster by being fitter than we are by being stronger. So what happened was our kilometers went from about 200 to 220 a week to about 260, 280 a week, which is horrible. It's horrible. But we were doing different things like power strokes and stuff on the water to offset it. So we ended up basically rowing 2 to 3 times a day, every single day. There'd be the occasional time where we got to go on the rowing machine if it was rough, and like the very odd occasion, maybe once a month, to go on the bikes. But every single other time was on the water, and we just rode. And to be fair, we did go really, really fast because of it. But the fact was, it was brutal, man. Like there was just absolutely no break around it. And that was the really hard thing to get your head around, was the fact that you were just rowing all the time, and it was hard.
Now looking back on it as a 38-year-old man now, like, do you think that is just unnecessary? Do you think it's necessary to row 260K a week? That just seems crazy.
If you want to win an Olympic gold medal, you do whatever it takes. Okay. And we were at the situation where we just had to sit there and go, how are we going to win an Olympic gold medal? Right. Did it with Rob Liddell. Yep. He did it with Eva Swindells twice. Okay. Yep. Shit, if we want to do this, we just got to do what he tells us to do. So if he came and he said, right, we're not going to row for a month, we're just going to sit on the bikes and do 300 Ks a day, we would have done 300 Ks a day. Like it was just, that's what he said we were going to do. And so we did it. And there was never any questioning about it, because he's the one with the experience, he's the coach, he's the one that you got to put the trust into. And that's the way we did it. Now, what we did do, yes, we did move away from that, and we did revolutionize training. And I sort of don't, sometimes I don't like going there with this sort of comment, but in 2013 and probably half of 2014, we only rowed once a day on the water. Mm-hmm. So we'd go down every morning, we'd row once a day, and then every other session was on the bikes or on the rowing machine. So we actually just completely flipped it from being 100% rowing to about 50 to 60% rowing. And we still went just as fast. Now, the problem with that is that if you're not up to the level and technique and the learning, the understanding of the boat, you probably need to be doing 70 to 80% on the water. I don't think you need to be doing 100%. That's for certain. But the flip side of it is when you are off the water, you've got to make sure it counts. You know, it's not like, oh, the coach has told us to do 45 minutes on the erg, so you spend 15 minutes of that warming up and then half an hour of it like pushing yourself. It's like, okay, warm up first and then hit it and then do it. You know, and that's the thing. We'd have these like 3-hour bike rides, you know, pushing 100 plus Ks. And it wasn't just like sitting there side by side talking to each other. It was hammering it, you know, like, and that's the difference. So, you know, you've got to look at it. Yes, you can get really fit by doing other things, but you've just got to make sure you're just not doing it to clock up the time. You're actually doing it to clock up the time in the intensity that you need to be doing it.
So let me ask you this, you know, like when you're rowing, I'm graduating college. I'm watching rowing on a serious level, and I'm watching you win by 15 lengths open water. I'm watching you guys, and everyone in my life is saying, "Who the hell are these guys?" Like,
yeah. I should explain that a little bit, because I don't think it's real, and it's what we said before we started, mate. Like getting some of these questions that people ask me, I don't think we've really put it into context why that started happening. We started to find that we'd do these races, and, you know, quite often we weren't leading at the 500, we'd be pushing it through the 1,000, this sort of thing. And then what we were doing, probably sort of a little bit up to London, but especially after London, we were finding that our rowing would go to, because we'd take the pressure off, we'd take the rating down just to stay in front, you know, just so we could cross the finish line first. And so we were finding we'd have these horrible races. We'd be like, you know what, the first K was great, you know, and we'd be like, oh, this is terrible. And so then we just started going, well, why don't we just keep the foot on and just push it all the way? Like, we're not going like 100% winding it to the line, but we're just basically time trialing it. So we go from the start to the finish, we keep the intensity all the way right to the finish line and go through the line. And then we'd actually find we'd feel better in ourselves as well, and we'd recover better because we weren't sort of fighting the finish in a, you know, like in an awkward position. So over the years, especially sort of 13, like 14, 15 especially, we go into heats and we'd get out in front and we just wouldn't slow down. We're just like, well, let's just keep going. But of course, our training had allowed us to do that, because while we're back here in New Zealand, we're not just doing 1 2K time trial, we're doing 3 over 3 days. You know, we're emulating World Cup situations and things like that. So we did have the ability to be able to do that anyway. And like what used to happen exactly like that is we'd just keep bowling out in front of everybody else. And next minute we've won the race by 10 or 12 seconds, and everyone's like going, what are you doing? Like, you should have just backed off. And we're like, well, why should we back off? You know, it was sort of one of the questions I asked. I said, well, why? Like, who says that we should just do enough to win and get across? Okay, it's not the Royal Henley Regatta where you're a gentleman and you just do enough to win. We were like, nah, we're going to go. And every race, every opportunity that we had was an opportunity for us to learn. You know, how well did that go? Where did we lose our speed? Did we lose speed in that third 500? Okay, we lost 2 seconds. Not good enough. Let's do it again. You know, let's make sure that doesn't happen again. So we're always learning from whatever we did. And wouldn't you say in any sport that you've got to learn? You've got to learn all the time. You've got to evolve. You've got to keep moving forward. And so that's basically what we were trying to do in those races. But on what was happening, consequently, was that we were winning them by a bloody country mile, and everybody's like, "Oh shit."
So did you ever lose motivation from that? I mean, I would think, like, let me say this. Like, if I'm being told by your dictator of a coach to do 260K a week, and I'm like, well, I'm winning by 30 seconds. I could probably scale back a little bit because that's human nature, right? But how did you keep that motivation when winning so much and doing so much volume?
I was going to post something on Instagram yesterday because I saw a memory that came up on my Facebook, and it was a picture of us in the fog. It was a beautiful picture of us training against our men's double, and I actually just wanted to come out with the tagline and say, like, if you want to get better, pin yourself against people that are faster or better than you and try and match them. Okay. And that's what we did every single day. So we had training partners. We had either a lightweight men's double, a men's double, or a women's quad. And we would train against them every single day. Like, every time we were on the water, if Dick said to us, right, we're going to do 20, 26K, whatever it was, to a certain point, turn around, he would go, okay, away you go, 20 rate. And we'd have to keep 20 rate, and we'd have to sit next to a double. Like, come on, you know what I mean? And so a double should be, you know, okay, they're pushing 10 seconds quicker than you every 2K. So you've got to go 10 seconds quicker per K than you think you can go with the intensity. And so what happened was just our intensity just kept lifting and lifting and lifting. So, you know, we would be doing phenomenal numbers, and we just had to in order to stay in that training group. And very, very often, like most of the time, we'd get halfway home, you know, 5K to home, and these guys are starting to row away from us. And we've got no option but bump up the rate a point or add some more gas and try and stay with them. And probably 70% of the time we couldn't. But the fact was that we tried every single day. So it's just that intensity that we brought to the training just really lifted the speed that we were able to produce at training. But then at the same time, we're racing these guys. You know, if we were going to do a 5K race, or if Dick said, right, we're going to do a couple of 2Ks at set rates, you've got to try and stay in front of them. So we might get a 5-second head start, stay in front of them, just stay in front of them. It's as simple as that. It sounds really simple, but it's really, really difficult. And so all our training was just, don't let other people beat us. and then we just took that into a racing philosophy at the same time.
Yeah, the consistency. So, as I'm hearing you, and I'm wondering, and we talked about this in some of the coaches yelling, um, were there the other countries seeing you win so much? Why don't you think like they put some of their best athletes into the pair? Because I know that like Great Britain puts their top guys in the 8, right? Or the Germans or the Americans. In that time, why didn't you move up to a different boat class, or maybe why didn't other guys go into other boat classes in that time?
Yeah. So probably one of my biggest regrets is that we didn't really nurture the people around us. So and it goes right back to what we said at the start, where Hamish just wanted to find the next best person and be like, right, we're going to smash it. We're going to be world beaters. So what we didn't really do was we didn't bring anybody else along for the ride. And some of those people probably didn't have the same philosophy that we did. So, we'd sit on the row machines, and you'd do these tests and stuff beside people. And there was a huge divide. There was a massive divide. Hamish and myself were doing low 15 minutes on 5Ks, and then other people were struggling to break 16s. They might be doing 50s or whatever. So all of a sudden you've got this huge difference between us and them. So we couldn't really make a 4. We had some really good guys that were rowing, but if you took them and said, right, should we make a 4? Let's see how well it could go. I truly didn't. I saw a couple of people that could have been good enough, but would they have come to the same intensity? Could they have done the same thing that we did? Probably not. And I think that's what happened around the world at the same time, because a lot of crews, especially like what happens in America a little bit, like all that small boat stuff's dictated by the people that want to do it. Like if you want to do it, you're going to go to the pair trials, you're going to go to the single trials and doubles. You're going to do that because you want to be in those boats. And the fact was, I think a lot of people around the world were just like, well, maybe I would like to race Eric and Hamish, but I can't be bothered, or I'd rather be in the 4, I'd rather be in the 8 because I think I've got a better chance at winning. And a lot of it just does come down to it. And it's probably a question that needs to be asked to some of the other competitors, like, would you have wanted to, or did you ever think that maybe you, on your best day, could have done something really good against them? Or was your thinking, I just want to win, so that's why I'm in the 4 or the quad or the 8 or the double, whatever it might be. And I think that's probably something a lot of people could answer probably better than what I can.
Like, forgive me, I'm gonna curse here for a minute. You're like fucking Michael Jordan. Like you are at a different level of rowing. Like you're talking about 15 minutes for your 5Ks. You're talking about these incredibly long rows and going hard and intensity all the time. In your period of time, in those 10 years that you were doing this, you were like a celebrity in the rowing world, but you weren't a celebrity outside the rowing world. Like what were you doing to get your name out there and promoting yourselves? Was there anything? Were you guys trying to get the name out there and blow it up?
Oh, look, rowing's, and we spoke about this on Coaches Yelling. Rowing just doesn't have like the superstars. It's not a sport that's in mainstream media. If there was some sort of league that could be done every week, then you've got a different kettle of fish. See, in New Zealand, we're in the media for 3 weekends a year, and then 1 week while we have the world champs. And then at the Olympic Games, there's a build up to it, and then you have the Olympics and that sort of thing. And if you do well, you put on the pedestal, and then you sort of put into that sporting personality type thing. So it's not a sport where you enter into going, yeah, I'm going to be rich, it's going to make me famous, because ultimately it's an addictive sport that we love, and we get involved for whatever reason you do, and you continue going with it, you keep pushing yourself, you keep seeing how far you can go. And that was really the case with us. We had something slightly different, that we were this partnership, and then we started getting a little bit more of a name because we ended up beaten. And then we set world records. And so people were like, wow, this is something different. This hasn't happened before. This is different, and then ultimately we got to that stage where, we were talked about a little bit more, you get a few people that want to sponsor you and get under the, and help you along. And so that was great. But ultimately, to be fair, like rowing is one of the most selfish bloody sports you can imagine. There's a lot of them, but you do it for yourself. Your family gets put on the back burner. Your social life gets put on the back burner, everything else, you just like, I'm doing this, screw you guys. I've got to go training tomorrow, so I'm not going out tonight. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And it's as simple as it goes. Like, see ya. Like, the one thing a lot of people don't realize is, like, in New Zealand, and same a little bit for the Aussies, is that we piss off overseas for 3 months a year. Like, we didn't just go up there and then fly back and then come back up to like world champs. We went for 3 months. It was like, see ya, and then gone. Pack your bag, on the plane. I'll see you in 3 months. And it's literally how we did it. And it, like, did I feel bad? Yeah, a little bit. But I was like, who cares? I'm going over to race World Cups and a few regattas overseas and try and win world championships. So, you know, that's the side of it as well, that you've got to remember, that it is a pretty bloody selfish sport, to be fair.
No, you're not wrong. I mean, again, I have a million questions, and I want to keep this to a tight time frame. What kind of boat were you rowing in that time? Were you rowing Empakers or Philippines at those races?
So you're probably going to get a reasonably good exclusive on this one. To be fair, you will. I've talked to it with a couple of people. Hamish and I didn't get a new boat every year. Okay. We got new oars. We love Concept 2s, and for people out there, and I don't know why, and I'll be careful with this. We used an oar called low eyes. They're called a low inertia oar, made by Concept 2. I absolutely do not know why more people are not using them. I cannot understand it. Okay. The Danish lightweight means 4, like through that sort of 04 to 08, even into London, we're using them. So they're a lighter oar. They're about 10% lighter. Okay, and I know skinnies are the big rage because it's aerodynamic and stuff like that. But man, when we used these low eye oars, they were phenomenal, man. They just hand speed around the finish. There's just nothing. It was just the oar would float away because there's no force. Hence the low inertia. Bang, and we were just like, wow. Okay, probably did allow us to rate quite high, but there was no heaviness in the hands. Light oar in the headwinds, it was a little bit more tricky. But I just was like, man, I don't know why more people aren't getting onto these. And we sort of, sometimes Hamish got a bit paranoid and he'd take the little label off the back so you couldn't realize it was a lower. Well, because honestly, all the coaches go around and they measure all this shit up and do all that sort of stuff. But yeah, so those were our oars that we clicked onto, and we kept those. Same oars, same specs, fixed handle, 377, 116, whole time, never changed it. And then our Empacker, we got an Empacker in 2009 when we went overseas, and we basically kept that through until 11. And it came down to New Zealand for the World Champs, so we got a new one. We kept that, and we rode that through. You know, but actually know that story that we got Rainer and Helmut Empacker to basically take it back to the factory in Eberbach and put it on the rack, and we'll get it back. And funny story is we turned up in 2016. We turned up to the World Cup in Lucerne, and we had a brand new boat. Didn't like it. It was just too stiff. We were like, nah, I don't like this. And it was either the Czechs or the Serbians had been given our old boat to use for the regatta. They used it. We used the new one. We still won, but we didn't really like it that much. And then basically we went to them after the thing with Helmut. And we said, look, can we get that boat back? Because they were going to take that boat over to the Olympic. We said, look, can we take that boat? We'll use it here. And then we would send it over to Rio. So we pinched the boat back off them, and we used that. So basically we had a 5-year-old boat that we raced at the Rio Olympics. Okay. And it was just because we changed little bits here and there. We didn't do any wholesale changes, but really effectively it had only been used for like 3 months a year. So it was, when you look at it, it's only like just over a year old in terms of like use. And so we didn't feel like we needed brand new boats. We tried carbon riggers. They were a bit hard on Hamish's back just because they were a bit stiff. So, you know, we went through all of these things over time, and we just found something that worked for us, and we just kept using what we had worked and just tweaking little things all the time. And it was probably a little bit off subject, but the fact is that, you know, don't go into something and go, right, we're going to change our technique today. We're going to change our training. We're going to bump the heights up, and we're also going to change your pitch. Okay, you had a great row. What worked? All of it? One of it. You don't know. And so we were always going, okay, why don't we just give ourselves a little bit more pitch or a little less pitch? Let's row that for a week, see how that goes. Okay, that felt better. Okay, let's try our heights down a bit or up a bit. Okay, that felt good. What about our feet? How about our placement in the seat? All this sort of thing. And so we'd work on that stuff, but we'd take our time to figure out whether it was actually working or not.
I love that story. I had no idea. Now, back in New Zealand, what were you rowing in New Zealand? Still Empires, just an older?
Yeah. We had an Empacker, and to be fair, we probably should have got a new one sent down because that one had a lot of miles on it, man, and it was pretty good. I think we got a new set of riggers for it, but by that stage, the boat had sort of 2010 to 2016, so it had 6 years of probably 30,000 Ks a year type of business on it, so it had done a lot of miles on the clock, but we just didn't really feel like for the fact of a year of getting Empacker to spend the expense to send one down. It was the same shape. It was everything that we were using in Europe, and so we were just doing that. So anyone that wants to know, it's an R32. It's a beautiful boat.
People will want to know that. So what was your favorite workout on the erg? So when you were training, out of all the workouts you've done, what was like the favorite one to do every week or every month?
Oh man, probably we didn't really have too much favorites because our physiologist was just really like heart rate specific, push it. One that I enjoyed doing it, but I absolutely fucking hated it. Excuse the language. We would do 40 on by 20 offs. So 40 strokes on, 40 seconds on, 20 seconds off. 2 sets of 15 of that. Okay. And that's at full tip. So not like above pace, you've got to gun it. And that is probably, we do that every second week. And it was part of, it's called like lactate tolerance, because you do this 40 seconds and you finish and you go, whoa, okay, holding like low 120s. Next minute you look at the clock and you got 7 seconds left in the rest. And the secret to the workout is that you don't go when it says 0, otherwise your average time is crap. So you've got to be winding it with about 4 seconds to go. So this is where it gets really hard. And of course you've got Hamish sitting next to you and I'm here. So he's going, I'm like, okay, I've got to go. And at the end of it, it's basically to see who's got the lowest average. And so if you don't hit that line at speed, then your average is going to be slow for that piece. And then all of a sudden, so that was a really fun workout because we were just pushing ourselves all the time to do it as hard as we could. It wasn't like the longest of workouts, but the fact was that it really pushed the limits and you saw the benefit every week. You got a little bit quicker, a little bit quicker, a little bit quicker. So, and sort of the testing wise, you go, well, I am getting faster, man. We are getting fitter. We're getting a bit more powerful. I felt like I could rate, 40 this week instead of 38, 39. And those were the best. And I guess on the other side of it, like as a rower, just to test yourself every week, like we do 2 days a week, we would just do an hour, right? And it's at 20 rate, and you just basically see what you can do with your splits, like how good was I today? Am I going sub 145s or am I doing the 144s or 43s, whatever it was. And it would all depend on how tired you were and the workouts you'd done previously. But to be fair, a lot of those times, literally, you've got Hamish, who's 90 kilograms. I was always sort of 99, 100 and like working up to world champs, hitting 98 for world champs. And I'm sitting there watching his numbers and they're exactly the same. And I'm like, man, that's phenomenal. And so he was actually an absolute demon when you're just doing that training stuff. And anyone that follows his Instagram will see it now. Like he can just go. And that's what makes him phenomenal. He doesn't have like the most outstanding, like explosive power, but when you need somebody that can sub-split a race and go faster in the third 500 than the second 500, he's your man.
Wow. So, one thing someone had asked me to ask you, because I told all my friends that I'm interviewing you today, and they said, what did he go through emotionally after leaving all of that success? So you leave the success, right? You move on from your career. What was going through your head? What was going with your family? and everyone around you. What was it like leaving that success and moving?
I think for us it was, well, for me it was relatively easy because in a sense I did I wanted to keep going. Like I got my son, he's 8 now, like he's on the autistic spectrum. So I was doing some stuff with him at school. And he was probably one of the big catalysts. I was like, look, I'm not going to be here. I'm going to have to go away overseas for 3 months every year. That's going to be tough. And there's all these bits and pieces. And so I just didn't have that desire to go out there and punish myself like I used to be able to. I didn't really have that clear goal, that clear, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is my target. This is where I'm going to go. It sort of flipped to being, I'd rather be doing things outside of rowing than actually rowing. And so that for me was really the big catalyst to say, look, I'm done. I guess on that note, I'm probably one of the lucky ones where I had that work experience and I had that semi-professional / amateur life growing up. So, in my first few years, even through till about 2007, rowing in New Zealand was very amateur / professional. We didn't get funded really until about 2008. And so we were working, and so I had done business management degree, and then obviously I was working at a place in town and sort of doing operations management. So I had this experience of going into it. And I think what in my opinion, what I'm finding with looking from an outsider perspective of what people are doing now, you've got all of these people that come out of sport, like especially like take rowing, for example, and you're a 32-year-old, cool, okay, you've achieved your goal, or you haven't achieved your goal, whatever, time to call it a day. You go back to where that 22-year-old graduate is coming out of university, okay? And that's what's really hard, I think, for a lot of people to get their heads around, where the people that have been doing that part-time stuff or keeping engaged outside in work situations, that type of thing, have that little bit of foot in the door. So then you don't go from being a 32-year-old in a 22-year-old world. You go from being a 32-year-old in a 28-year-old world, and you go, well, that's fine. Okay, I've done 8 years of part-time work, 2 days a week, 8 hours a week, who cares? But you've learned how things work, how life works outside of like sport. And I think I was really to have that. So then I was able to step into positions. Yeah, I had some good people that wanted to work with me, that asked me to come and help them. And I've used that knowledge of not only the degree that you use, but that work experience, and you put it all together. So it's very difficult now. And I will say that it's really hard because people they want you to be full-time, nothing outside, don't do this, don't do that. And I do think that shouldn't be the case. I definitely think there is room for people to actually be getting that work experience outside, even if it's internship stuff, like when you have your breaks, you get 3 or 4 weeks off a year, or whatever it might be, go and work somewhere, like there's a lot of people that are following your progress. They want to help out at the same time. Go, look, I've studied my accountant's degree. I'm an accountant, cool. Why don't you come and work with me for a month? Even if you're doing the crap jobs, who cares? You've got that experience, and then you can walk away from your sport and go, I've got 8 years at ABC Accounting Limited as an accountant, and someone will go, oh, cool. Why don't you come and do our chartered accounts here at our office? And then all of a sudden you've moved away from your sport into a career, and you're there. And I really think that's something that I don't know if it'll ever change, but I think people personally have to take that initiative themselves to be able to find out how that goes. Because if you keep your head in the sand, you can have 2 or 3 degrees in the time if you spend 12 or 14 years in the programs, and you come out and people go, oh, cool, you've got triple degree in this, this, and this. Okay, what's your work experience? Oh, you don't have any. Okay. And that's where I think the issues are found, is that work experience is far more valuable than having letters and stuff beside your name.
Now, I don't know this actually, and forgive me, but what are you doing now with your life? Like, what do you do outside? I mean, now that you're, like today, I don't know, like, what are you doing today for a profession?
What am I doing today? I'm going to go play golf. No. I actually am going to play golf this afternoon. So I work in business development here, and so we've got a company down here called ErgFit, and we basically work with Concept 2. We work with that. I'm also working with one of the top banks here in New Zealand as an ambassador. So that side of things I'm quite lucky about. But day-to-day stuff is business development, trying to grow the company, do the ambassador role. I'm also patron for Autism New Zealand, just because of like Zach and my son, and I push that sort of autism message. There's a really good connection there. And then also at the same time, I'm working with the guys from the Sensei on the connected coaching app. So I've got some good opportunities. And to be fair, there's a lot going on. And sometimes you've got to sort of slow down and say, look, you got your boy to worry about. He's got to go to school. He's got to do all this other stuff. And so life can get pretty busy. And that's one thing I've been finding. But bread and butter type of things, it's just using that experience that I've had to set your targets, get them done, and show the initiative of going through your day-to-day, getting things finished, and making sure they're done properly. And I think that is one of the things, all of those life skills that you learn from rowing,
you
being able to take them into that job situation, that is probably why you get it.
There was I'm looking at your career, like you were an intense person, right? Like you spent hours and hours and hours focused on training every single day. Like, I know that you're doing all these things, but like, how do you handle that intensity every single day and that focus and not having to do that anymore?
It's quite nice, actually. As I say, the one thing that I look back on our training and I try to explain to people, we weren't training, we were punishing. We were putting ourselves into places that we didn't want to be. We were being vulnerable every day. We were trying to fail in our trainings so that we could learn what to do the next day, what to make it better. And that's really the thing is, I enjoyed that. But of course it wasn't sustainable. You got to a point where you were just like, man, I don't know how long. You were more worried about counting down the days to when you were finished rather than going, I can't wait to get to the world champs. I hope we've done enough. It was more just like, man, I can't wait to take a break. And I think that just develops over the years to get to that point where it is you're more concerned about finishing than you are about the excitement of getting there. And I think the moment you start getting those too much into your life is the moment things need to start to change. And I think that was one thing with going forward. I just couldn't find the excitement to say, I really want to go and do another cycle. And I would enjoy being in the 8, but I just know that I couldn't add that value. And this is what you have to do in every day is you sit there and you've got the target you want to do and you've got to make sure you get it done. And you focus all your energy into doing it, but you don't have to punish yourself. So it's nice. You get more of a completism type of, I get feeling rather than like, thank God that's finished. And I quite enjoy that nowadays, going back to that because it is sort of that feeling you had when you were younger where you were like, yes, I can't wait to get to that finish line. Whereas like in an excitable way rather than going, oh my God, just hurry up and finish. And so it is quite nice when you get out it to turn back into that mode rather than into that sort of slight negative.
So I got 6 questions to finish, and these are like rapid fire questions. Okay.
Go.
All right. What was your best race of your life? Best race of your life?
Oh, best race. Shit. Oh mate, this is meant to be quick fire. Honestly, I'm going to go out like there's been some really awesome international races, but there's so many more of the domestic stuff we did here in New Zealand when we were racing against like Nathan and Joe or Robbie and Chris in a double, women's quad, lightweight double, that type of thing, that were actually far more exciting and nerve-wracking than some of the stuff we did overseas. Definitely, I definitely put like the 2 Olympic races are memorable because of what you get at the finish of them, but not the most enjoyable because of the stress and anxiety and stuff around them. I would say one of the best was probably our first race in the pair together, Munich 2009. It was when, Andy and Pete in the pair, Eric and Hamish in the pair, Pete and Andy, next Pinson and Redgrave, next minute we're tied all the way down the track with 500 to go, and then we bugger off. And then that was sort of the start of the legacy. So I still remember that race quite vividly. I watched it a couple of weeks ago, actually.
Wow.
And that's probably one of them. Sorry, it's not the quickest answer, but that is probably, because that was the starting point, right? That was like, we're good on an international stage. How good can we be, and how long can we take this for?
I love that answer. Favorite venue to row? Favorite place to row?
I actually, in terms of racing, it's definitely Lucerne. I love Lucerne. One of actually a nice place to train, which I quite enjoyed, is Haaswinkel in Belgium. I actually really enjoyed Haaswinkel.
Favorite, so this is a difficult question. Like, what's your favorite aspect of rowing? Like, what's like the one thing that you just are in love with rowing?
One thing that really used to float my boat, excuse the pun, was going to World Cups and pacing people in training, World Cups and World Champs, and pacing people. You know, like when everybody's practicing on the course, we used to try and pick off people, man. And like, I remember picking off the American Women's Aid and their quad and just different people, because you go like, they're training, you know, they're sitting at 20, they're doing like a piece just rowing down the track. And if you sit next to them or just in front of them, you can see everybody like looking out of the boat going, hang on, how the hell's a peer sitting beside us? And people used to do it to us, and I knew that, but at the same time, I was like, nah, I'm just going to try and pick people off. So that was probably one of the most enjoyable things about rowing, is just, you know, being able to compete even when you're not actually racing.
I love that. Favorite, best rowing coach of all time? Who's your best coach of all time?
Oh, come on. I'll tell you one person that, and he's done some really great things. There's two. There's a guy called Chris Nielsen. He worked with Mike Tady and stuff through that 2004, went to Cambridge, came back to New Zealand. He really taught us about finesse. Another person currently in the systems, Ian Wright, who's now coaching Australia, and he coached the Swiss lightweights to win in Rio. Absolute hard ass. Like, he taught us how to just be hard, you know, like just be mongrels and go hard. Noel, great guy, has that real great mix, really personable person. Those are the sort of the people that we've had. And obviously, like Dick, if you want to win, go get coached by Dick. If you want to win, it's not going to be fun, but you know what, when you start weighing it up, what do you want? Do you want a gold medal, or do you want to have fun? After you've won that gold medal, yeah, you can go and have fun, but yeah, first and foremost, gold medal first.
Are you friends with Mahi Drysdale?
Yeah, I'm friendly with Mahi. You know, we've been in the program together. We raced in the 4 together back in the day. We actually did our first year together. 2001, we went to Canadian Henley and then went on to the Canada Cup in a 4. And then we were in that Athens 4 together. Then he went in the single, and then we basically trained next to him for 4 years while we were under Dick. And then he's just part of the program with the rest of the boys from there. Well,
final question. If I get my ass to New Zealand, can I be in a boat with you for a day?
Yeah, of course you can, buddy. But guess what? America at the moment, you guys are shut down, and I don't know when we're going to let you buggers back in here with all your coronavirus sickness over there. So we've just opened up here, man. We're sorted, you guys.
Oh, man. Well, once we get sorted here, I'm going to get my butt in a boat with you. Eric Murray, this has been a blast. Thank you so much for being a part of this interview today. I hope you enjoyed it.
That's right. I've got my boy. Oh,
there he is.
Look at him, little monkey.
Go get
your toys.
Captain America? Is he sporting Captain America?
That's Captain America shirt. Yeah. He is.
Captain America rules. Well, Eric, thank you for being a part of this. And we hope to have you on Coaches Yelling in the future.
Yep. Awesome. Anytime, guys. Love chatting.